Misha, 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 Nechnas Adar. Misha, 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 Nechnas Adar. Misha, Nechnas Adar, Marvin Besimcha. Hi, this is David Orlofsky, and welcome to the Adar edition of the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch and listen to your podcasts, I hope you have a happy Purim, a happy Adar, and your life filled with simcha. And don't forget to like besimcha, share besimcha, subscribe besimcha, and comment besimcha. Yeah, hopefully something nice. Okay, and we have a Simcha Dika sponsor for this week, sponsored anonymously in honor of you. Thank you. And all you do for Klal Yisrael. May this sponsorship be a schus for you, your listeners, and all of Klal Yisrael. Thank you so much for those warm wishes and warm ideas. I occasionally have a studio audience. Sometimes we get a lot of people. Sometimes we only get a few people. Sometimes we get only one person. And I do what I often do before I do a podcast. I say, what should I talk about? I'm doing this for a bunch of years already, you know? I know it seems like I just can keep talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And the fact I can. But I usually need a starting point. In fact, one time when my children decided to take me out to a nice restaurant for my birthday, so they decided to play a game, and they had 3 piles of different, kind of subjects and things that you had to mix and match. And then you had 30 seconds to look at it and give a speech on it for 2 minutes. I never had a problem. I found plenty of ways of tying them all together. And some of them, they were actually pretty impressed. Yeah. So, I was paying for dinner. What's the big deal? Anyway, so you better be impressed. But the idea is that, if I have an idea. So sometimes people give me an idea and I do that right on the spot, So I remember back in the day when producer Michael was in charge, I would always say, what should I talk about? He's like, I don't know. I'd ask my wife on the way, what should I talk about? I don't know, yeah. So there was somebody who was visiting. He says, well, this is the first one of the new season. Talk about beginnings. I said, okay, let's go. So we had somebody who was our studio audience recently. And I said, what should I talk about? And she suggested talking about simcha. And I said, I think I talk about simcha a lot, but I guess you can never talk about it too much, especially today. And I figured it was a good topic, but I would save it for Rosh Chodesh Adar, because as the Chazal say, Mishenichnas Adar, Marvim Besimcha, which led a good friend of mine. I don't know if he wants me to quote him. The truth is, because, he's since gone on to become a very chashuv Talmid Chacham, and I don't know if he wants me to mention all the funny things that he said, because he was a very funny guy. It probably still is, but when you become a big Talmid Chacham, you have to kind of hide those things. Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, who was hysterically funny, but he worked very hard to keep it under control. I remember when I first signed up when somebody was trying to get me into the shir. So he says, listen, I have a friend, David Orlofsky. He's a chinuch. Apparently he had just been in London to speak in the JLE, and they had a post up for me. So he mentions, Yesh chaver sheli, David Orlofsky, who habatzes Torah. And Rabbi Moshe goes, Ken, this is the funniest rabbi in the world. And the guy told it over to me. I said, was he making fun? He goes, no, he was jealous because he thinks he's the funniest rabbi in the world. And he really is. He was a master joke teller. He was very funny. He worked very hard to keep it under control. You could see he worked very hard to keep up the level of year, but he has a fabulous sense of humor. And he would love to share jokes. So so I don't know if he wants to say this, but he used to say that Rosh Chodesh Adar is the saddest day on the Jewish calendar. Why? Because it says, Mishenichnas Av Ma'atim B'Simcha. When Av comes, we lessen our Simcha. But it doesn't say when to stop. So you just get sadder and sadder through the entire year, through Elul, through Tishrei, yeah, through Teves, through Shvat. And then finally, when you get to Rosh Chodesh Adar, when you're as sad as you can possibly be, Mishnechlas Adar Marbim B'Simcha, now you start getting happy. And so you have to build yourself all the way up into the happiest day of the year is Rosh Chodesh Av, because then you're told to start limiting it. Clever insight. But the idea of entering Adar and being Marbim B'Simcha, understand this. When Rav Noach Weinberg used to point this out in the Memches Dvarim in Pirkei Avos, every now and then there's a miyat shena, miyat schayra, all these things, miyat limited. It says, what does that mean? That means you're supposed to have it, just not to an excess, which means we're always supposed to be happy. Only now we're supposed to be marba in the simcha that we already have, but we have to be happy. And this is such an important point because so many people are not happy. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. You have to be happy. I can't tell you how many times people come up to me and say, "Oh, Rabbi Orlofsky, I'm really down. Can you tell me a joke?" Now, as a rule, I don't really tell. I have a few jokes that I do tell, but for the most part, I don't have too many jokes. That's not what I really do. I say things in a funny way. When I'm speaking, I can get up and just say, "Good evening," and I get a laugh. That in and of itself is not really very funny. What makes it funny is the fact that I'm saying it. And so I have a certain base level of credibility that people know he's funny. So whether what he said was funny or not, there are times that I'll just ask a kasha and people start laughing. From the way I present the kasha, I build it up. That itself is funny. So, so I don't really tell jokes per se. I have a few jokes that I tell, but people who've watched my podcast know them. So I just recently had the opportunity to be with a family, and sure enough, one of the kids said, "Tell a joke," and someone else says, "But we've heard all of your recordings, so we know all of your jokes." I said, "But you never heard my parrot jokes." I have a rather unusual collection of parrot jokes. I don't know if I can remember them all right on the spot, but, there was this parrot that was in the window of a pet shop, and this woman would walk by every day, and the parrot would go, "Hey, lady, you're ugly." She says, "That's enough." And every day the parrot would say, "Hey, lady, you're ugly." Finally, one day she had enough. She goes into the pet store and says, "I'm not going to be abused by this parrot. If he says that to me one more time, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to bring a lawsuit and mental anguish, and I'll take this." So the pet owner says to the parrot, "Listen, you better knock it off, or you know what I'm saying? You're going to go to that big parrot cage in the sky." So the next day, the lady's walking down the street, and the parrot goes, "Hey, lady." She walks up to the window and says, "What?" "You know." There was a chazan. He's getting ready for Yom Kippur. Just getting ready for Yom Kippur. And he was practicing his Kol Nidre. And he goes to sleep, and he hears his voice downstairs going, "Kol Nidre." Now, sometimes he would tape himself. I thought maybe he left the recorder on. He goes down, the recorder is off. Goes back upstairs, he hears it again. Kol nidre. Because this is too much. He goes down, and then he sees it's the parrot. The parrot was listening as he was practicing, and he learned Kol nidre. He said, wow, this is unbelievable. And the next day to shul, he brings his parrot with him in a cage, and he says, my parrot knows Kol nidre. They said, that's ridiculous. He said, I'm telling you the truth. They said, I'll bet you $100 he can't do it. And he goes, I'll take that bet. And someone says, I want a piece of the action. I'm going to bet 100. I'm going to bet 100. Anyway, it goes up to thousands of dollars. He says to the parrot, go ahead, do Kol nidre. No, Kol nidre. Kol nidre. Polly want a cracker? Anyway, he loses thousands of dollars. And he gets back home. And he says, why wouldn't you sing? And he goes, because next year we'll clean up. Anyway, this guy had a parrot. We didn't know where it came from, but it apparently had a very foul mouth, and it just kept cursing. And he finally says to the parrot, you better stop or you're going to get it. And he wouldn't stop. So he took the parrot and he stuck him in the freezer. And a minute later, he goes, can I come out? Says, you're going to behave yourself? He goes, yes. He takes him out. Says, no more cursing. Okay. Can I ask you a question? Says, yeah. What did the chicken say? So the guy goes into a pet store and he says, I want to buy a parrot. And he says, okay, this one, regular parrot, $10. Says, okay. He says, this parrot's $100. He says, why? He says, he knows Tanakh Baal Peh. He says, really? He says, yeah, this parrot's $1,000. He says, really? He says, yeah, he knows Tanakh and Mishnayos Baal Peh. It's unbelievable. He says, this one's $10,000. He says, why? He says, he knows Tanakh, Mishnayos, and all Shas Baal Peh. He says, wow. He says, how much is that one? Says, you can't afford him. How much is it? It's $1 million. $1 million? Why? What does he know? He says, I don't know. But when I take him out of the cage, all the other parrots start going, anyway, those aren't my only parrot jokes, but that just gives you a sampling. But, I have to really dig to try to remember jokes. Comics have it very hard. I always say, if you're a comedian, you just have to get up there and tell jokes. And if you don't get a laugh, you just die. I can always fall back and do Torah. You know what I mean? So if they don't laugh at the joke, that's why people say, you don't wait for the laugh. I said, that's right. Because if there's no laugh, then I'm stuck. If you tell a joke and you go, and nothing happens. You're like these comedians are like, I'm dying up here. I'm dying. Hey, is this on? Hello. I know you're out there. I can hear you breathing. But I want to make a distinction. Because telling jokes has nothing to do with simcha. That's schayk. And I probably have mentioned this in past years, that Purim is not the holiday of simcha. Sukkot is the holiday of simcha. Zman simcha seinu. Purim is the holiday of schayk, of laughter. Laughter is the unexpected. You laugh when something unexpected happens. Guy walks into a bar, orders a drink. Not very happy, right? Not very funny. Guy walks into a bar, says, ouch. It's also not very funny, but at least it's a joke, because you thought he walked into a pub and he actually walked into a bar. Two men walk into a bar. You think one of them would have seen it. So the idea is it's unexpected. It turned it on its side. There's an old joke. This is if you're a joke teller, you have to anticipate. It's like when you're a magician and everyone knows how a trick is done. You come up with a new way of doing the trick that fools people. Those are called sucker gags in the magic world, if you will. So comedians have to know how to change it around. So like there's an old joke everybody knows. They were in a prison and there was only one joke book in the library and everybody had memorized the jokes. And so they wouldn't even bother telling the jokes. They would just say the number. So someone would get up and say number 16 and everybody would laugh. And somebody would say number 22 and somebody would laugh. So it was a new guy. He says, what's going on? They explained to him the rules. He goes, oh, I want to try. 19. Nobody laughs. He says, how come nobody laughed? He goes, some people don't know how to tell a joke. Okay, that's the standard joke. So I know everyone knows that joke already. So I do a little twist. There was a comedian convention. Of course, all these comedians know all the jokes already. So they just give the number. So Johnny Carson goes, number 12? And everyone goes, ah, ha, ha, ha. And Buddy Hackett says, number 33. And everyone goes, ah, ha, ha, ha. And one guy says, number 9. And this one guy is laughing and laughing. He says, what's so funny? He goes, I never heard that one. Hafucha hafuch. As they say over here, it's a joke and a joke. So it's unexpected. But jokes are not simcha. People who need jokes to cheer them up don't understand what simcha is all about. So I'm sure I've done this in a previous podcast because it's one of my favorite rants. And there are people who like just to hear me rant, and that's what they call it. I like to say an in-depth examination of a societal issue, but other people like to call them rants. So I'm not going to argue with that, In fact, there was one president that always annoyed me, Ulysses S. Grant. All right, what am I going to tell you? And that's about Jewish music. Jewish music has always gotten me upset because it's not Jewish. And that's why nobody has patience for it. When I was growing up, you could sing Tzaveh for 45 minutes straight. Tzaveh, 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 Yeshua is Yankif, Tzaveh, Tzaveh, and they were just same niggin. Nobody felt like today we have to keep changing the niggin every 3 minutes. That's because it's not real Jewish music. If it's real Jewish music, you can spend a lot of time on a niggin. It gets into you, it gets into your soul. But these kind of things are, especially when you have these techno hits and things you can't even sing. And it's just the proof of a song is one that you can sing it for a very long time. Yeah. So I said, I remember when Jewish music died. I was there. I still remember it. There was a German rock group called Genghis Khan who wrote some German rock song. And Mordechai and David took it and wrote Jewish words, Yiddish words to it, and called it Yidden. And you'd be at a chasana, and everybody would be singing whatever the usual Jewish songs were. Kilo yitosh Hashem, Kilo yitosh Hashem Amo. Hashem Hoshiyah HaMelech Yaneh. It doesn't get too wild. Sometimes if you're going dancing like this, they'll suddenly change direction. I mean, that was like, wow, over the top, But these are all the songs. The songs were like, really kind of like, low key. And then at some point, the band would go, no, 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 and everybody over the age of 30 got off the dance floor, and the kids would come in and do the Yidden dance. It's like, someone said to me once, how do you know if it's one of these, rip-offs or if it's an actual Jewish song? I said, if the girls on the other side of the mechitza give a primal scream, you know that that's not a Jewish song. None of the girls ever screamed by Tzaveh. Tzaveh, this is not a Jewish song. The primal scream is one of my things. And you just see how it changes, how the whole dynamic of the room changes, and the dancing and the attitude. Real Jewish songs aren't like that. There are Jewish songs which could be nice and were for no reason rocked up, so that they just become, someone told me once they had this poster of like a Jewish concert, and you see these Beis Yaakov girls like, go-going, you know what I mean? And there's some chassid on the stage like smashing his guitar, you know what I mean? And like, it's like just like a regular rock concert, it's like, and I said, what is this all about? Jewish entertainment, people come out and do a dance. They don't dance. They have to have moves, this and that, and the whole thing, rollerblading, shtick. I once saw a clip of Dvekis at a His concert. Abraham is sitting at the piano, and everyone else is standing around, and they're just singing. Yehi, yehi, shalom, shalom, na, da, da, and he's just playing, and then they would stop, and he would just play the piano, and then they would sing again, shalom, shalom, ra, na, 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 right? And just not doing anything. And people are like, well, that's not much of a stage presence. Yeah, because it's music. I need a stage presence for it. You know, shtick. Have to have performance, have to choreograph it, have to have dancing. Before there was Jewish entertainment, there was just chazanim. The chazanim would get out there with their big chazan hat, you know. Sometimes there'd be an organ in the background, just, you know, for effect. And, no, you know. But you never saw the chazan suddenly stop and go, it's like, he didn't have any moves. You know, and I said, now there's this idea that we have to have Torah entertainment. We have to dance, there have to be movement, there have to be costumes, there have to be, you know, all kinds of stuff. Why? What do we need Torah entertainment for? As I told this story, I'm sure I must have talked about this in the past, you know. The Miami Boys Choir wanted to make a concert in Yerushalayim. This is many years ago. They wanted to get permission from the Bedats. And they said, we want to make a concert. He said, Mazik concert. They never even heard of it. Because, yeah, Simcha Machlebedik. They said, Simcha Shelma. Simchas Chosin Vekala. Simchas Siyam Mesechta. Simchas Beisa Shoeva. Eze min Simcha Zeh. So they did it in Tel Aviv instead. But it was such a great question. What does that mean you're making a simcha? So I said this whole idea of concerts and entertainment, what is it all about? And I used to do this almost every year when I don't remember where it was in Masil Shasharim that would set me off on this. And one year a girl said something that was so poignant. She said, because our lives are so sad that we need a reason to be happy. That's what people mean when they say, tell me a joke. I need to be happy. So let's talk a little bit about happiness. First of all, people say, I can't help it. I love that. I can't help it. I'm not happy. Not happy. If you look in Orchot Tzadikim, you'll find that simcha is a midah, which means you have the ability to control it. There's such a thing as I'm not happy. And this is one of the biggest problems in a marriage. So he doesn't make me happy. She doesn't make me happy. No one makes you happy. You make yourself happy or you make yourself miserable. You choose. You have control over it. You're not a victim. I know we live in a society with a victim mentality. It's not my fault. Of course it's your fault. It's not my fault I lost my temper. They pushed me. Of course it's your fault. You know, I'm not happy. What does that mean I'm not happy? I've told this over in the past, but it somehow never minimizes the shock value. I am by nature a depressed person. That's my nature. I'm depressed and I'm shy. If I was a kid today, they would probably have me on meds. You know, back then they didn't have meds. They just said, cheer up. Which is also good advice, but I couldn't. I'm sure it was something chemical. There was something in me. Maybe it was related to my ADD. I don't know what it was, but I was constantly depressed. Like I had a cloud hanging over me, and I couldn't be happy. It was so hard, and I tried all kinds of different things. I remember I had somebody in Beis Medrash who finally said to me, "Okay, so you're not happy. So now go on and live life." I thought, wow, that's the first practical piece of advice that I had. Who says you have to be happy to live life? You just have to do what you have to do and worry about it later. And that's what I did. But as time went on, I realized that the depression was debilitating to me. It was really holding me back. And it took me many years to get over it. It's still my default. If I'm tired or if I'm sick, I'm under the weather, I slip into my natural state, which is being depressed. That's my natural state. And I'm naturally shy, which people find surprising because I'm a public speaker, but I'm naturally shy. When I go to a chassan, I look for an empty table, or a bar mitzvah. Here in Israel, you have a bar mitzvah, they don't have seating. Sit at an empty table. They bring me my plate with 3 starches on it and vegetables that might have been stir-fried once upon a time, but now just look sad. And I sit there and by myself the required amount of time, and then I go and I give my sefer and I go home, and I don't look to talk to anybody. It's just not who I am. I'm a shy person. And sometimes somebody will come over and say, "Oh, Rabbi Orlofsky," and they'll talk to me, and then so I slip into Rabbi Orlofsky mode and I have a whole conversation. But by nature, I'm a very shy person. I don't engage people. It doesn't come naturally to me. So I'm also by nature a very sad person. But I made a decision to become happy, and I worked on it very hard. I would, for me, Broadway show music helped. They're all bouncy kind of tunes, that pick you up, Steve Martin, he used to play the banjo. He says, can't play a sad song on the banjo, Oh, death, destruction, and dun 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 bum 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 bum. It was pretty funny. So I would listen to music that would pick me up, I would work to reframe. I would look in the mirror and smile, just to see a smiling face. You mirror it, things like that. And I would have to refocus my mind because, you have a computer. Sometimes a computer, if you do a lot of the same keys in a while, you can make a macro where you just push one button. It does it. That's essentially what a computer program is. When you start it up, it makes a whole bunch of click, 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 clicks very quickly. And that's a macro. Your brain does the same thing. If you keep thinking the same set of thoughts, it makes a shortcut. So as soon as the first thought comes, boom, 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 you end up in the same place. So you have to change your thinking. You have to shift it and break that pattern, right? They say it's unhealthy ways of thinking, unhealthy obsessions. It's true. I work very hard. That's why I always get a kick out of it when I meet people who say, oh, you're one of those naturally happy people. And I say, no, I'm one of those naturally depressed people, but I worked very hard to be happy. And a person says, I'm not happy. That's not an excuse. So make yourself happy. So you have to work on the midah. You have to find some way to do it. Now, I made a difference over here between simcha and tzchaik. Sukkot is man simcha seinu. Right? What does that mean? Say the Chazal, ein simcha ka'ataras hasfeikas. The greatest happiness is removing doubts. Doubts makes us sad. And that's why when you look in Orchas Tzadikim, he brings a midah and its opposite. So he'll bring gaiva and he'll bring a nova. He has kaz, he has ratzon. Yeah. He has simcha and he has daiga, worry. Worries is what stops us from being happy. And that's why bitochen is extremely powerful for us to be able to become happy. It's part of simcha. Because if you know that you have an all-powerful being who wants to be your friend and wants to help you, that'll go a long way. People, let me tell you about my best friend. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anyway, so, Hashem is looking out for you. If you could internalize that message, why aren't we happy? Because we're always worrying. What's going to be? What's going to happen? Yeah, daigas. Yeah. Sameach b'chalko. I'm happy with what I have. And I learned to make this happy. And so much of it is tied into bitochen. Let it go. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there. You're not alone. And that's why Sukkot is Man Simchaseinu. Why are we so happy on Sukkot? Because we just came out of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we were Zoich B'din, right? We carry the lulav and the esrog because, as the Chazal say, if someone goes into judgment and they walk out carrying the king's scepter and orb, not so popular today, but a scepter and an orb are signs of Malchus, and the king gives those things to you, then you know that you were Zoich B'din. On Sukkot, we know it was Zoich B'din. Hashem forgave us. We know that we are clean, that our sins were forgiven. Right? We on Yom Kippur, we get a kapara. Right? I've gotten forgiven for my sins. And to help us, says the Sefer Chinuch, Hashem set up the world at that time that it should be Chaga Asif. So we take in all of our grain, and we take in all of our barrels of oil, and we take in all of our barrels of wine, and we take in all of our fruit, and we store them in, and our storehouses are full, and we feel secure. That's simcha. Simcha is copacetic. It's a even high. As a diabetic, one of the ways you become a diabetic, unless you're born with it, right? But those of us who are type 2 diabetics who worked very hard to get there, you eat a lot of sugar or high carb stuff, and that causes your blood sugar to shoot up, and it causes your body to release a lot of insulin to deal with it, and then it goes crashing down. So that's why the example they always give is those people who are like feeling a little tired, they don't realize their blood sugar is low, so they eat a candy bar at 5 o'clock and they get a burst of energy, and then they have another crash because it shoots up and it shoots back down. Whereas if you eat, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, they help your blood sugar stay stable. That's such an important aspect, to keep it stable. The same thing is true about your moods. You want to keep your mood stable, not with big highs. Now, there are certain times when we add to our simcha, that's called sason. Sason is more than simcha. Sos is supposed to be taking us beyond just a simple simcha. Yeah? Hudamar says sason v'simcha. Yeah? That's a higher level. At a chasana, we're supposed to have more simcha than we normally do. On Yontif, we're supposed to have more simcha. There are times when we say you should have simchas. So then we try to pull it up a notch. And that's the whole month of Adar. Whole month of Adar is marbim b'simcha. We're supposed to be happier, move it up a level. But there's a base simcha. That's when it says marbim b'simcha or ma'atim b'simcha. It means you're always supposed to be b'simcha. There's supposed to be a certain base simcha that everybody has. And like I say, if I had to point to the one thing that people can work on the most, it's their bitachon. Because then you have nothing to worry about. And the Musa movement, the book, The Musa Movement, The Fire Within, about the Musa movement. So he writes that the happiest people were Navardikas. Now that seems very interesting because Navardik is always the butt of jokes, because they spent their whole time focusing on bittul hayesh. I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody. A guy walks into a Navardik yeshiva and he sees everyone sitting there saying, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, And he's inspired and he sits down and starts going, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody. One of the older guys says, who do you think you are? It took me years to become a nobody. You don't become a nobody overnight. But these, people make fun of Navardikas, But the truth is, he says, they were the happiest people. Why? Because what gets us upset I didn't get what I wanted. They didn't treat me with enough kavod. I didn't get this and that. I'm always upset. But if I have everything I need, and I believe that I have everything I need, samech b'chelkai, and I have nothing to worry about, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu is taking care of me, there's nothing to be sad about. What am I sad about? I'm not missing anything. It's all bitachon. I'm sure I told this story before. Yeah. I was driving and I saw a great spot, but it was on the other side of the street. So I went to turn around, and in between, someone slipped in, parked the wrong way on that spot. And the person I was with said, that guy took your spot. And I said, if he took it, it wasn't my spot, because you can't take my spot. Yeah. Nobody can take anything you're supposed to get. Yeah, you're going to get everything you're going to get. You don't have to worry. I was at a chasana, and they served like everyone at the table, and they skipped me. And everybody was in a panic. He didn't get a portion. I got a portion. I told the waiter. I said, if I'm supposed to get a portion, I'll get the portion. And if not, I don't have to worry. That was the story in Tells, where the Shiva got up. He was about to make Kiddush, and he puts down the kais, and he walks all the way around to one of the tables. And he sees that a boy already took a piece of cake and put it on his plate. He says, you worried you won't get a piece of cake? Put it back on the platter. I'll make sure you get a piece of cake. People are nervous. I'm not going to get. Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he calls this the scarcity mentality. And that's why people look into a negotiation being that the only way I win is if you lose. He says the best negotiations are win-win, where both people walk away satisfied. But I think there's not enough for everybody. So I have to take, and you don't. I'm always amazed when I go to a hotel here in Eretz Yisrael, and very often the meals are buffets. And so they put out watermelon for dessert. And when I get up to the dessert table, there's no watermelon left. And I look on tables, big plates filled with watermelon. The people couldn't possibly have eaten that much watermelon. They took as much as they possibly could. They ate a couple of pieces and they left all the rest. They couldn't eat it. But they made sure that nobody else got it, because there's not going to be enough, because we're going to run out. The scarcity mentality. And so I'm always afraid HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to be able to provide for me. Hashem is not going to be able to help me. When I get stuck in traffic, nothing I can do. I just have a regular car. I couldn't rent Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which flies. Oh, my Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, we love you and our Chitty Chitty Bang. Like all children's movies, it's absolutely terrifying. I don't know. Children's movies, they're all so incredibly scary. The Wizard of Oz, forget about it. People still have nightmares from that movie. Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory, when they go into that tunnel, oh my goodness, Terrifying. But nothing I can do. I can't make the cars move. I can't go any faster. Sometimes I'm late for an appointment. Nothing I can do. I have no options here. I just have to wait till it goes. Hopefully I'll get there. If I don't, I don't. If I miss my flight, I miss my flight. I can't do anything. I'm not going to phone in a bomb threat. There's nothing I can do. And once you embrace that, you're so happy. Because I'm getting everything I'm supposed to get. You never feel like I didn't get what I was supposed to get. You never feel like I'm missing out. You never have to worry. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taking care of everything. Bitachon is the key to simcha. The more you trust in Hashem, the happier you will be. And what is Adar all about? Adar is all about that we had no idea what was going on. We thought we did. At each point, we thought we understood. And it turns out we never understood what was happening at all. Mordechai said, don't go to the party. Mordechai's wrong. Yeah, Mordechai won't bow down to Haman. Mordechai's wrong. They're building the gallows. Mordechai's going to get hanged. And we're all going to get killed. And it turns out we were wrong about everything. And when they realized that, they laughed because that was unexpected. And they said to themselves, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's running the show. He has not forgotten about us. He hasn't. You know, I've mentioned a number of times how my speaking career sort of imploded just before COVID. I used to go every month, every 2 months. I used to have a trip every 2 months, and I'd go to America and speak, and just fell out. I don't know why exactly, but so people like to give me eitzes. Why did you send people emails? Did you this? Did you try that? Did you go here? You know, you have to promote yourself more. You have to this. You know, I said, I don't believe there's anybody out there who hasn't heard of me who is in the business. You know, I'm pretty well known by this point. Everyone knows who I am, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows who I am. He knows where I live. He's got my file on his desk. You know, he hasn't forgotten about me. I didn't get lost in the shuffle. I don't have to remind him. I'm doing fine. Doing fine. You know, when my son was looking for his shidduch, he had a very long list of what he was looking for. Every girl he'd go out with, nope, she's not smart enough. She's not pretty enough. She's not firm enough. She's not this enough. That. So finally I said to him, you know, Yaakov, you got to do some hishtadlis. He says, I am. I'm davening and I have bitochen. That's all you need. And sure enough, he found the girl had everything on his list. It's a friend of my daughter's, so like, you know, Kadosh Baruch Hu delivered him to the house. He didn't even have to go. It's like the mun for tzaddikim would fall right outside their window. It fell, you know, right to his house, you know, hand delivery, you know. So, and I tell this to older singles whenever I can. I tell this story. I said, that's your hishtadlis. You know, you have to have bitochen and you have to daven, and that's it. Everything else is kleinigkeit. You know, I have these girls. They say you have to dress a little. You know, provocative is too strong a word, but a little more. You know, with it. You know. You want to attract a good from boy in learning. This girl told me, that's what the Shadchan told her. And she said, if the only way I can find a boy in learning is to compromise on my tznius, I'd rather not get married. Boy, oh boy. You know, it's, you have to be talking. By the way, she got married. Most of my stories have no endings, but this one, Baruch Hashem, had a happy ending. Got married. And, we have to learn to have bitochen and trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And like I say, when it's easy to trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's not the trick. I'm sure I've told the story where Shach asked the Brisker Rav, says, Amunah? How hard is Amunah? Anybody with half a brain can figure out that there's a God and he gave the Torah. The evidence is overwhelming. And the Brisker Rav says, I know. Amunah starts when it doesn't make any sense. So when everything's going well and you have bitochen, that's one thing. When things start to go bad, and I don't even mean like Eov bad, but for most people, they don't need the trials of Job in order to start questioning HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know, something goes wrong that they wanted, something happens, and suddenly, you know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu abandoned me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't care about me. How do you make that kind of a jump? And if you live in that kind of a world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not taking care of you, then there's no question you're going to be unhappy a lot. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taking care of you, I've got a all-powerful friend sitting on my shoulder and the sky blue above. Yeah. Nothing to worry about. No reason not to be happy. Yeah, and whatever happens, you deal with it. I've told this before. Used to have a poster on my wall when I was running NCSY that said, if they're running you out of town, grab a baton and make it look like a parade. Yeah. I can't control events, but I can control how I choose to react to those events. That's simcha. You're always happy if you know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is steering the ship, not me. The Chavetz Chaim gives a mashal of people who work on Shabbos. He says, it's like a guy who's in a train. The train's going, and he has to get to some meeting. It's not going fast enough, and he finally says, that's it. And the person next to him says, what are you going to do? He says, I'm going out back to push. He says, you're going to be left on the track. The train's going 100 miles an hour. You're not going to make it go any faster. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a parnasa for you. So you think that if you go work on Shabbos, then you're going to make more money? He says, it's like you have a barrel of wine and you add an extra spigot. You didn't get any more wine, just coming out faster. But it's the same amount of wine at the end that's going to come out. And so a person who has that bitachon will always have simcha. And so as we enter Chodesh Adar, it's time for us to work on our simcha, Mishenichnas Adar, Marvin b'simcha, which is what? Marvin b'bitachon. Kodesh Baruch Hu is always there for you. And when you feel like he's not, Kaveh el Hashem. If that's not good enough, Chazek v'yamez libecha v'kaveh el Hashem. Strengthen yourself and then hope for God's Yeshua and salvation. And in Mitzvah Hashem, all of Klal Yisrael will come out of the darkness and into the light. This is the time to celebrate the light and the happiness coming out of all the sadness and destruction that the Jewish people have suffered. And now we come to the question and answer portion of our program. That's not as easy to say as you might imagine. This is the perfect position to proportion the questions for the program's question and answer portion. It is sponsored, the Q&A is sponsored in honor of the Rav. Oh, everyone is being so nice to me today. For the endless chizuk over the years and for answering many of my questions, which aren't statements or attacks. Only sincere attempts to hear MS. And in honor of my wonderful uncle, Raphael, and Tanta Chevi Klatsko. Absolutely. Absolutely. The Klatsko family is a institution. And it's a chus for me to know most of them. I don't know all of them. I know a lot of them. They're really a wonderful, wonderful group of people. Anonymous asks, do you believe in teaching children's Aesop's fables? Stories like the goose that laid the golden egg, the boy who cried wolf, the tortoise and the hare. Do these stories have values worth teaching, or should we only use Torah sources and nothing else? Someone once asked Moshe Shapiro if you're allowed to study English literature. And he said, if you hold it to Chachma, you can learn it. What does that mean? That means that I never read the book, but an Englishman told me that he had read a book called Little Lord Fauntleroy or something like that. And he says, it has more Musar in it than all of the contemporary from children's books, which very often don't have good Musar in them. There are products made from kids that do not always reflect Torah values. I don't want to name names, but you can think of it for yourself, things that don't bring across, kids don't behave in nice ways and don't do the right thing and but they do it for humor. So it's supposed to be entertaining. But things that can teach you Musar, again, as long as the lesson is a good lesson, right? If the moral of the story is therefore never help anybody, The moral of the story is people stink. You know what I mean? So then, no, that's a bad one. But there is an Aesop's fable that I use because I think it's an absolutely brilliant mashal. And remember, that's all we're talking about are mishalim. That's what they are. So if you can use a mashal to bring it across, there's the one where the grandfather and the grandson are taking their mule to sell him. And they're both walking, and they meet the first person, and he says, how come you're both walking? Why doesn't one of you ride the mule? So the grandson says, Grandpa, why don't you ride? So they meet the next person. The next person says, you selfish old man, you make the little boy walk and you ride? So they switch places. And they come along to the next person, and he says, you selfish little boy, you make your old grandfather walk? So they both ride. Next person they met says, look at that poor mule. Look at how weak he is. You know, you're both riding on him. He doesn't have the strength. You should be carrying him. So they get a pole, and they tie the mule to the pole, and they start carrying it. And the mule is kicking and biting and shoving because he's not meant to do this. You know, and eventually they come to a bridge, and he breaks off, falls in, and drowns. The moral of the story is you try to make everybody happy, you make nobody happy. I think it's a brilliant example. So they're just mishalim. And I would like to suggest that that's what I hope Reb Moshe meant. I don't know if that's what he meant. I'm going to guess that that's what he meant, is that English literature is a mashal. I bring examples from English literature all the time as mishalim. And there are some Dickens works that have just absolutely brilliant satire that you can use to quote. I often quote examples from Les Miserables of moral lessons you can learn from that. And there are always opportunities. I'm pretty sure I told the story where the Toldos Avram Yitzchak was by the Besht. And this non-Jewish fix-it man comes in and says, Rabbi, you need anything fixed? And he says, no, everything's fine. He says, come on, Rabbi. I'm sure if you look hard enough, you can find something to fix. So when he leaves, he turns to me, he says, you hear that? Because Baruch Hu sent that Musa. Yeah, if you look hard enough, there's always something to fix. So he looks at the Baal Shem Tov and says, come on, this guy is here to give us Musa. I can't accept that. And the Baal Shem Tov says, you can, you just don't want to. All right. So eventually he heads home, and this Polish farmer has a cart with big bales of hay, and they fell off. And he said, can you help me put the bales back on? He says, I can't. I'm an old man. I'm not strong enough. I can't do it. And he looks at him and says, you can, you just don't want to. The idea is that there's Musa everywhere around us if we keep our eyes open and we look for it. So if you find wisdom in the Aesop's fables, like all things, you have to make sure that the message is a message that has meaning, right? One of the worst aspects of the Harry Potter series is it basically is a attack on the fact that Jews marry Jews. Because in the books, they have this concept of pure bloods should only marry pure bloods, regular magicians, sorcerers, and they should not marry muggles who are like non-magic people. And that's, of course, terrible. And therefore, Hagrid is a giant who married a regular magician, and Lupin is a werewolf, and we should have, respect for werewolves, and regular magicians get married, and that. And the whole thing is intermarriage. So if you're careful only to marry among your own, then you're basically a Death Eater. So that means, of course, Jews who are careful to only marry other Jews are Death Eaters. So you may not get that message when you first read it, but the idea of tolerance to the point of being intolerant of people who want to stay among their own is a message that comes across. And so with anything, with any children's book or any thing that you try. Look at the Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is supposed to have a moral message. There's no place like home. But the fact of the matter is that the good witch basically manipulates Dorothy into doing her dirty work for her and killing the evil witch because she doesn't want to do it herself. She could have told her the whole time, just wish on those ruby slippers and go home. But instead, she takes advantage of her the whole time. That's a terrible message. So if I don't know all the Aesop fables, Balpeh, but if the message itself is a positive, I brought you an example of one that I think is a good example. So if there's a one that has a positive message, you want to use the mashal, you can. In fact, Rabbi Ari Khan told me, he heard from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, I don't know if he heard from him or he heard B'Shem Shlomo Auerbach, that you're allowed to make up stories and tell them as if they're true. You can say, listen, I knew a person who, and tell a whole story. Why? Because according to one man, Eov never happened. The whole thing was just made up to prove a point. So they wrote a whole book in Tanakh, which is not true, but is presented as if it's true, and it's just a mashal to bring a point across. He says, so you can also make up a story to be able to make a point. That's the way he puts it. And that's it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. I'm getting more people who are expressing interest in starting a course on answering the basic questions of Judaism. If I reach a certain number, I'll do it. What is that number? I don't know, but it's got to be enough that, we have a body count, don't want to. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You know the story about the guy who gets up to speak. It's at this long convention, and he's the last. He gets up to speak, and there's only one person in the room. He says, "Okay, I'm going to do my speech anyway." And he gives his whole drusha, and this one guy is standing there. And at the end, thank you very much. And he comes down from the stage. He's up on the stage. He comes down. And he says, "Thank you so much for staying." He says, "I had to. I'm the next speaker." So we don't want to have that I'm the next speaker, you know what I mean? In any event, you can sign up for that. You can still sign up for the ladies' Mesil Shasharim. You can still sign up for the Daf Yomi, for the Tefillah Shir. And you can sponsor an episode, sponsor question and answer, sponsor a Parsha in 5. And that's it for now. Everyone should have a Simcha Dika Adar and be well. And until next time, I am Dovid Orlofsky, and this has been The Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.